We're talking UFC Vancouver. Props to Brendan Allen for stepping in on short notice and now taking on RDR. It's unfortunate that we lost that initial matchup between Fluffy Hernandez and Reinier De Ridder, which very likely could have been a number one contenders bout. Although Nasruddin Imavov may have still had an argument that he should be next after he just had a big victory over Kyle Bahalo. Now, the way I'm looking at this new main event matchup, if RDR wins, it's still possible that he could be next to fight for the title. I believe if he gets a W here, he'll be on a 7-fight winning streak compared to the 6-fight winning streak of Imavov. If you guys want to argue about the level of competition, of victories that each fighter has, meet me in the comment section. I'm changing my tone a little bit here. I'm not completely sold on who's going to be next. I mean, if you guys have been watching me over the last couple months, really what you've been hearing me talk about was that Fluffy Hernandez was the fighter that was going to make a run and get that title shot. So, yeah, I mean, it's just very unfortunate that Fluffy had to withdraw, and I would have had Fluffy defeating RDR. All right, and you guys will hear my thoughts on this new matchup here in a little bit. But before we jump into the first fight, if you guys can all smash that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new here. And you guys know, if you want my official targets for this card, you guys can email me or DM me on Instagram. I'll give you further details there. I got a couple promos going on. Go catch me on all my social media. I'll get some good content coming your guys' way over there. And with that all being said, we're going to jump right into the first bout. Let's go. We'll kick this episode off with the bantamweight matchup between Charles Jourdain and Davey Grant. And if you don't think we're going to see an absolute war here, I don't know what you guys are thinking, because this is definitely going to be one of those types of fights. Both of these men have a consistent track record of going in there and putting on a show for the fans, okay? Their main type of fighting style, in my opinion, is entertaining. That's what I think about when I think about these two fighters here. Now, the first thing that stands out to us, without a doubt, is the fact that there's a 10-year age discrepancy in this matchup, right? And most alarming is the fact that Davey Grant is nearing being 40 years old, fighting in the bantamweight division, which it's very hard to have success up in age like that in the lower weight classes. And somehow Grant has seemed to get better with age. Okay, you look at his most recent performances. I mean, he's still going in there, getting his hand raised. In fact, many of us have him essentially going into this fight on a 5-fight winning streak, as the vast majority had him defeating Daniel Marcos, who's not a bad fighter. Okay, so that's a solid W that he had there. The victory that he just had over Damon Blackshear, he entered that fight as a major underdog. We had him as an official target. We cashed in there, if you guys remember. I mean, that's a big victory, going in there like a dog the way he was and defending the grappling attack of Blackshear, showcasing that development time and time again. We know that his striking, it's sharp. It could be unorthodox at times, and it gives fighters problems. And I think that his striking can give Jourdain some issues here. In fact, I expect this to be a very closely contested match on the feet. I like the striking abilities that Jourdain has, but I think that Grant actually is going to be a little bit more crisp and a little bit more technical with his striking. I think he'll land the mark a little bit quicker than Jourdain. Now, Jourdain is coming into this fight after a very successful weight class drop. If you guys remember, he was fighting in the featherweight division to start his UFC career off, to start his mixed martial arts career off at that. And he dropped down to 135 against Victor Henry, and he looked very good. He was the first fighter to finish Henry. Okay, he caught him with his patented guillotine choke. He's done that many times in the UFC. Not only did he make weight perfectly fine, he weighed in at 135. Okay, he weighed in at the championship weight. So the weight cut doesn't seem to be a problem. I really like what he has going on. You saw his brother on Dana White's Contender Series recently. His brother looked phenomenal. Now, this is a tough pick for me. I'm going to let you guys know right now. Initially, I was on Jourdain to win this fight. I think that he has a lot going for himself right now, and I think that he could have a lot of success in this weight class. But Grant is no joke, and I feel like Grant is going to be right in this fight, and I think that Jourdain's just going to be a little bit behind him in a war. As they're exchanging, I think that Grant will thrive in those wild type of exchanges. And you talk about some of the jiu-jitsu skills that Jourdain has. I believe he is a black belt in BJJ. He's pretty nasty down in the mat, and at times he's shown to be pretty slick with getting the fight down there. But Grant, his takedown defense has been looking really sharp, and the way he just stuffed Blackshear's attempts, or at the very least had success consistently keeping it from going down there as the fight progressed, and that was the difference in that fight. I think that he could do that enough here. I think he can keep the fight standing enough, and I think that Grant is just a little bit more technical, and he'll get the better of the striking exchanges in a war, while also still noting that he's solid there too, man. This is a wild one. I lean a little bit more towards Grant's way, and we'll slide over to the betting odds in 1 second. But I was just rewatching Jourdain's match against John Silva, and boy, was that frustrating to watch as Silva just completely sucked Jourdain into those tactics of constantly giving him high fives and making him feel like he was in a sparring match before he just absolutely dismantled him with an uppercut and put him out. And you got to wonder, I'm sure that had a lot to do with Jourdain making the drop that he did to the bantamweight division, because you saw the difference in physicality between a fighter like Silva and Jourdain. And I do think that Jourdain will look good in this weight class. He's long, he's rangy, but so is Grant. Okay, Grant, he fights well in this division, and I think that Grant does enough to get the job done here. You take a look at some line movement here as Grant opened up right around at plus 100, and very minuscule movement initially on Grant as he's now a minus 105. The days of catching Davey Grant as a big-time underdog in a spot like this is far behind us. People understand that even though he's 39 years old, even now, he is dangerous. Give me Davey Grant to win this fight. I'll say he wins this fight via decision. I'm going to say he doesn't get Jourdain out of there. I think that this fight will be an absolute war. It will entertain, but it will make it to the final bell. But Grant will get his hand raised. There's a possibility it can go to like a split decision, or Jourdain still snags up around. It's a closely contested bout, but Grant gets it done. Drew Dober is now 4-6 in his last 10 bouts. He's not even a 500 fighter. He has been finished in the vast majority of those losses. This is a huge fight for him as he takes on Kyle Prepolec. Prepolec is essentially being awarded with this big name matchup based off the fact that he took that last bout against BSD on short notice. And of course, he was finished in the second round. He was submitted. And that loss came after he was cut by the UFC, and he went to the regional scene and started to have some success. Now, it wasn't all perfect. He did take an L against a fellow countryman, Shane Campbell. He also had a victory over Michael Dufour. I mean, essentially what he was doing was fighting some of the best talent up there in Canada, trying to get another opportunity to fight inside the octagon. But what really stood out to me was the way he ended his regional bouts, when he went on a 3-fight winning streak and had some big-time knockouts. All right, you run the tape back on the victory that he had over Marco Elpadillo. That was a nasty knockout. He hit him with the head kick there. And, you know, the reason why I bring that up, well, let me also say this. He followed that knockout up with 2 more first-round KOs before getting that BSD opportunity. And you have to take a look at those victories, because Drew Dober, he has issues with his durability. And even though a lot of us are looking at this fight like, oh, Dober is the more polished striker and he should be well ahead in this match, it could only take one strike to shake things up. Okay, if Dober runs into just one big strike of Prepolec's, this fight could be over. Okay, as far as durability goes, I have more issues with Dober than Prepolec. I know both fighters are 36 years old. Both of them have a good amount of bouts under their belt. Dober a little bit more. I think Dober is the fighter that has more wear and tear on him here. I think that Prepolec is much more durable. In fact, I do believe that Kyle Prepolec has never been finished via KO before. Let's take a look at that real quick. Yeah, he is. If you take a look here, he's never been knocked out. He's been subbed 3 times. Are you really that worried that Dober is going to get him down to the mat and pull off a sub similarly to what BSD just did? I'm not so worried about that. Okay, so I think the fact that these two men are going to go in there and slug it out, and although Prepolec is not the quickest, he's not the most athletic, his offensive striking is not the sharpest, he is decent at sucking you into 2 counter strikes, and it will only take 1. Okay, so I'm just trying to warn all of you guys right now that Prepolec is live in this bout, and if we see a finish, I'm almost more inclined to think that it is Prepolec knocking Drew Dober out in this fight, which some of you guys may be thinking, well, you know what? Whoa, that's wild, especially as we get over to the betting odds here in a second. Now, I still am going to say that Dober wins this fight. Dober should have that speed advantage and be more technically offensively, and he should land a little bit more so And as long as we don't see a finish, I think that that's a better thing for Dober. I think if you were to say, if there's no finish in this fight, with Dober, would you sign on to that? I think that he may actually want to sign that contract there. Not to say he can't land his own KO, because we know he's very dangerous there, but Prepolec has shown to be very durable, and I have concerns about the chin of Dober. Now, this is a southpaw versus southpaw that will make things interesting as well. Give me Dober to win a decision. You take a look at the money line here. He is currently a minus 480. Minuscule movement. He opened up as a minus 470. I'm a little interested in that initial line movement, and I'm curious to see where this line settles. I think that you start to see a little bit of action come in on Prepolec. I don't know. Maybe people are tuning in to walk the line and they catch on, or maybe a lot of people already have these thoughts that Prepolec is a live dog here, because I'm telling you, he is, man. He's a live dog. We'll see how this fight plays out, but give me Dober to win via decision. I always knew that Bruno Silva spent a lot of time training with Henry Cejudo as he trains over there at Team Fight Ready, but I thought that it was very interesting to hear Cejudo say that he has put in more work training with Bruno than any other fighter, that he has gotten in more rounds with Bruno than any other fighter since he has been training mixed martial arts. And without a doubt, that's a plus to have as a fighter. And I'm speaking in Bruno's case, right? To be able to put that much work in with one of the greatest fighters to have ever done it around your weight. Of course, training with elite fighters doesn't make you elite. I mean, that's not how it works, but it makes you a sharper and better fighter. And Bruno Silva, he's still a top 15 ranked flyweight fighter, which some people are scratching their heads about. And if you need help to understand why that's the case, the fact of the matter is that he was a fighter that was very, very respected years ago, and he had a hiatus from the sport. He came back and got right back to business, right? He went out there and finished up Tyson Nam. He submitted him in the second round. He knocked out Cody Djorden, who is somewhat of a respected fighter around this weight. And yeah, he came up short in his last two bouts, but look at the level of competition. Okay, Manel Kape and Joshua Van are two of the best fighters, two of the most elite fighters in the flyweight division. Okay, and in fact, I have them basically in my top three right there with Pantoja. So, you lose to those fighters, you get finished in the third round in both of those fights, your stock doesn't go down that much, all right? Now, on the other hand, you want to talk Hyun Park. He takes that short notice bout with Tatsuro Taira, which he was still training for a fight and all that. It was just a little bit of a swap, an opponent. He was prepared to fight on the date. It was obviously a much more higher level of opponent that he had to face off with, and he did not look the part when he went in there with Taira, man. He was completely outclassed from the moment that bell rung. He looked like he had octagon jitters. He looked shy in there. The way that he was dropped by Taira, right? And it wasn't only the fact that he got submitted in the second round as he got hit with that face crank. If you remember, Taira hit him with a nice straight right, I believe it was, and sat him down early on. Bruno Silva has some power, man. Bruno Silva has hands, and if Park goes out here and he fights hesitant once again, don't be surprised if he gets landed on and potentially gets dropped here, because Bruno Silva is a fighter that has showcased for some time that he has solid power. Okay, he knocked out Cody Djorden. He knocked out Victor Rodriguez. He knocked out JP Bays. I know Bays has a suspect chin, but he went in there and he was dropping heavy strikes on him. Okay, realistically, if you take a look at all of his losses, they're against respectable opposition, and I believe that you're going to see a very hungry Bruno Silva here. I think that he knows that his back is up against the wall. It doesn't matter if you're just losing to high-level fighters. You cannot just continuously lose bouts, okay? He doesn't want to go on an 0-3 streak here. And I could see a motivated and sharp Bruno Silva come in here and pose a major threat to a fighter like Hyun Park. I like Park's fluidity with his striking. He throws nice combinations, but, take a look at the level of competition that he was doing that against, okay? All right, he teed off on Shannon Ross. He eventually got that finish in the second round. Shannon Ross, around that time, just was a complete shell of himself and really was never all that to begin with. Carlos Hernandez, he's a decent, okay fighter, and I thought that Park looked good in that fight. It's like, as decent as Park looked down on the mat against Hernandez, he looked that much more atrocious against Taira. But it's a tough puzzle to put together because Taira is so elite down there. Did Park look so bad with his grappling just due to the fact that Taira is that good? But even then, it's just like you got to put a little bit more of a fight up against a fighter like Taira. You can't just be dominated in that fashion. So I think that Bruno Silva is a fighter that checks off a lot of boxes. He has solid wrestling, solid striking, solid grappling as a whole. And I think that he could avoid being dominated there. I think he could stuff takedowns. He can make this a striking bout. And I think that he is live to land a big punch in this fight and shake things up, or at the very least, gain that respect from Park, where this is a bout that plays out very closely. All right. If you remember, I was in the arena live for Bruno's his last fight against Manel Kopp. The Joshua Van was the last one. I was there in the arena when he took on Manel Kopp. I believe that was the last fight, the last event of 2024. And if you guys run the tape back, you'll hear everybody saying "F you, Silva," and I definitely had nothing to do with that chant starting to catch steam in the arena. But if you run the tape back, you'll hear it in the background. And people were kind of chanting that at one point in time in the fight due to the fact that Kopp was kind of playing with him and just they wanted to see a little bit of a pickup from Silva with his pace, and he did that, man. In the third round, he went at it. If you guys remember, he was throwing big hooks. He was looking to land that KO. He was trying to give himself an opportunity to win that fight when he was already down 2, and that's what opened him up to being finished by Kopp. And just understand, Kopp is elite. Okay, that dude moves so differently, and I can't wait to see him eventually get his shot at the title. But the point being is that I think that Silva is still a good fighter. And as we take a look at the odds for this fight, not only do I believe that there's value on Bruno Silva's money line here, he opened up as a plus 220. He's now plus 205. Makes perfect sense. You see action coming in on him. This line should be much closer. I'm going to say that Bruno Silva gets the job done here, okay? I'm going to throw out an underdog pick towards your guys' way. I think that Bruno Silva is going to be right in this fight. He's more proven. He's more battle proven. Park shows flashes, and he may put it together. He's still a young fighter, and he may put it together. He's shown grappling flashes and striking flashes, but mentally he also has shown to have some questions there, and I think that Silva could take this fight. Give me the underdog here, and I'll say he wins this fight. I'm going to say Bruno wins this fight inside the distance. I'm going to say we see a finish, which this is a flyweight bout. You don't typically see finishes. Bruno Silva has finishes in his last 4 wins inside the octagon. The only time we've seen Park take an L, he completely you know what he did to the bed there, and he got finished early on. I think Silva definitely can get him out of there, whether it's hitting him with the big strike or even following him down to the mat and maybe hurting him and sinking in some kind of choke or something like that. He is a fight finisher. You take a look at the numbers. Out of his 14 wins, 7 of them are documented as finishes, but there are 6 unknown types, which were early regional victories. Bruno is a fight finisher. Take a look at the work he's doing inside the octagon. I think he very likely can finish this fight. I'll make a call there. Not a lot of confidence behind it because I could still see him winning a decision as well, but give me the dog here. Danny Barlow makes the move up to the middleweight division, and you have to believe that his last bout obviously had a lot to do with the decision that was made there, as he was brutally KO'd by Sam Patterson. I'm sure that him and his team feel that weight cut was taken just a little bit too much out of him, and it correlated to some durability issues. I really like the matchup that the UFC is giving him here, as he's taking on Jourdain Santos, who is a very low-level fighter. I think that the UFC feels that Danny Barlow is still a solid prospect. He brings in some real intangibles with his long frame, speed, and power that he has in his hands. And he's a fun fighter to watch. And although he's 30 years old, he just has 10 pro fights. So why throw him in there with another fighter that could potentially expose him? Similarly to what Patterson did to him. I mean, you take a look at the Nikolay Veretinikov fight, which Veretinikov is kind of shown to be a lower level fighter. That was a bout that played out very closely. That went to a split decision. Okay, he had the knockout over Josh Quinlan in the 3rd round before that, and that fight played out closely prior to him finding the KO. And of course, he had the big knockout against Raheem Forrest, who was a fellow statesman of him on DWCS. That was a fun fight there. So even though he's 30 years old, I still look at Barlow as kind of like a younger prospect. He has a lot of things to work on, but he potentially could be a good fighter in 2 to 3 years when he's 33. When he starts to reach his prime, which should be around him being 34, 33, he still has a lot of potential, I would say. Jourdain Santos, on the other hand, is just 28 years old, which I myself find hard to believe. I mean, dude looks like he's in his mid-30s, but that's a good thing for him that he's just 28, because he has a lot to work on. I have not been impressed with what I've seen from him. Now, I will give him credit as he's a fun fighter, and he has some boxing skills that he brings to the table. That's really his bread and butter. We saw that on display against Will Curry on DWCS. But, I mean, you have to understand, when you're watching that Will Curry fight, Curry, he tries to implement his kicking game inside the cage. He has almost zero striking defense. His head was there to just be teed off on. And I think that Santos should have gotten him out of there in that fight. There were so many opportunities really for him to just put him out. The chin was right there, and he didn't even showcase the power to be able to get him out of there. Against Ozzy Diaz, who is another very low-level fighter, not only does he not get Ozzy out of there, which Ozzy typically gets knocked out, right, when he's even losing fights, he loses the fight to him. So that really gives you a gauge of where Santos is at. And I also feel that this matchup is a major advantage for Barlow in the sense that he was just brutally KO'd not too long ago, but now he's taken on a fighter in Santos who just has 3 knockouts out of his 10 victories. I don't really look at him as a fighter that has much of a threat with his power. And now that Barlow's going up in weight, he should be a little bit more durable. As long as he doesn't get caught with the striking and get knocked out, I think that he's the much more polished striker as a whole. Maybe I shouldn't say the much more, but he is the more polished striker. And I think that he wins in a fight that goes 15 minutes. If we see a knockout, Santos has never been KO'd, so he does show to have good durability. I don't know if Barlow is going to be able to go out there and get him out of there. And we'll also see how Barlow's power looks going up in weight. His power may not look as good in the middleweight division as it looked in the welterweight division. So, at the end of the day, I think that Barlow wins this fight via decision. I say he doesn't get Santos out of there. And I say it goes to the final bell, but Barlow is just a little bit more slick with his boxing skills, which both these fighters should welcome that type of fight. You should see both of these fighters being able to use their footwork and just have a boxing-centered type of fight. You'll see some kicks mixed in, but you'll see a lot of hands being thrown. And I think that Barlow will get the better of that type of fight. You see over here, Barlow opened up as a minus 245, and we see action coming in on him as he almost neared being a minus 300 already. Now he's back to a minus 280. I wouldn't have a lot of confidence in backing Barlow as a minus 300 favorite. I think that the opening minus 245 line is more accurate in my opinion. I think that he should definitely be a decent sized favorite here. He's the better fighter, and it's very likely he's going to get his hand raised. Maybe you look to target him winning this fight via decision, but even then you're playing with fire a little bit because Santos is there to be hit and Barlow has power. So we have to see how that plays out with him going up in weight. Give me Barlow to win this fight via decision. Not crazy, but the minus 300 nearing line. Try to catch him a little bit lower as a minus 245 or something like that. Maybe you mix him in a parlay, but Barlow should get his hand raised. In the strawweight division, Stephanie Luciano takes on Ravena Oliveira. And what comes to mind to me when I see this matchup being made is the UFC once again seeing a fighter that they believe has potential, who's young, who is green, like in the case when we talked about Barlow, and they're coming off a tough loss, and the UFC kind of wants to give them an opportunity to right the ship. That's what I see here. This is really a solid matchup for Luciano, who comes in off a tough split decision loss to Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes is a crafty veteran and a fighter that is a step way above anything that we've seen from this young fighter, Ravena Oliveira. And most importantly, the stylistic matchup, because Oliveira hasn't shown anything with her grappling. And the one flaw that we've seen early on in Luciana is the fact that she can be taken down and controlled, right? You take a look at the stats in that Sam Hughes fight. She was taken down 3 times on 8 attempts, kind of showcasing the developing takedown defense, but she was still controlled for 4 minutes and 21 seconds. And I say that the grappling and the takedown defense is definitely developing because you take a look at the 2 bouts that she had against Talita Al-Ansar, which the first one was very entertaining and went to a draw. Talita, a high-caliber jiu-jitsu player, had a lot more success getting that first fight down to the mat. In the rematch, she wasn't able to replicate that success nearly as much, and you saw Luciano go out there and put a stamp, get her hand raised there. So this is a young fighter that has the look. I think you guys would agree. She has talented striking, and I think that this is a fighter that will be fighting in the UFC for some time to come. I think that her more polished striking will be the difference here. Now, I'll just say this real quick. Oliveira is a fun fighter. If you think back to the loss that she took in her last bout against Tainara Lisboa, who we'll be talking about here in a second, if you remember how that fight ended, she was trying to bite down on her mouthpiece and throw some heavy strikes, and She even yelled out "puta" to her real quick as she was trying to get her when she clearly knew that she was losing the fight. But I like the energy that she brings in. That was her UFC debut, in fact, that she lost, and I just think that she shows to be lower level. Both these fighters don't have a lot of pro experience. There's a lot to be worked on. These are two young fighters. Maybe Oliveira has taken a massive step up since she's been working over in the gym. She's a young fighter, but I'm not expecting to see anything that she's going to unravel that's going to be enough for her to go out here and take out Luciano. So to cut to the chase, I have Luciano winning this fight. I'll say that she wins via decision. I think that that's the recipe here with this fight down in the strawweight division. I just think that we see Luciano being a clear step ahead in the striking exchanges. She gets her hand raised. She's a minus 340. I think that that line's pretty accurate. She should be a pretty hefty favorite here. I think that she's just ahead, and maybe you look to take her to win this fight via decision, or you target this fight to go the distance if you're looking for something here. But Luciano gets her hand raised. Hey, you guys, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. And I just want to enlighten you on what's going on here real quick, because if you guys can tell, I am under the weather. I caught a nasty flu thing, and I'm losing my voice, and I'm feeling it right now. But luckily, I have already recorded the bulk of this episode. I just want to let you know, just for the next two bouts, you're going to hear my voice like this because I was waiting on the odds to be released for the Croden versus Lisboa fight and the Bekoev and Belgaroui bouts. Okay, so just for those two bouts, you may notice they're a little bit quicker, or you may hear my annoying voice here, my raspy voice. But the rest of it, the whole rest of the main card, we're right back to being sharp on the mic, and that was when I was still feeling pretty good. So I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. It means the world to me. If you guys can smash that subscribe button, hit the like button. It really helps me out here, guys. And of course, if you guys want my official targets for this card, you guys can email me or DM me on Instagram. And remember, guys, I also have a complete sports betting package for all you MLB bettors with the playoffs going on, and for college football and the NFL. And I'm very sharp with those specific sports as well. So if you guys want in, all right, I got a couple different options that we could work something out. So, oh boys, I'm feeling it. All right, I'm going to go hit the couch and enjoy the show. In the women's bantamweight division, we have Melissa Croden taking on Tainara Lisboa. Croden makes her UFC debut. She represents Canada. In fact, she actually lives relatively close to where these fights are going to be taking place. You could expect that the crowd will be rooting her on. Now, I look at Croden as a very green fighter. She only has 8 professional fights under her belt. When you watch some of her more recent bouts, which took place over in the LFA, you see there's a lot to be worked on. Yeah, she has had some success as of recently. Like, you could pull up her full fight on YouTube, her most recent fight against Ashley Dean. She gets the second round finish, but these are very low level opponents. One thing that she does do well is impose her will in the clinch, right? She'll close the distance. She's large. She'll drop elbows and knees on you, specifically knees. And that could be a possible path to success in this fight. But we know that Lisboa has a bit of a striking background, so she'll be comfortable there. Remember, Lisboa came into MMA with that kickboxing background. In fact, she battled Valentina Shevchenko a couple times before she made her MMA pro debut, where she was submitted by Norma Dumont. She was also just subbed in her last bout against Luana Santos, but not only was she just subbed in that fight, right? She got caught with an Americana. She looked atrocious. She was completely outstruck before getting subbed in the second round. If you would have cut her a little slack, she did come into that bout off of a 2-year layoff. And I do think that we'll see a little bit of a better version of her here. But she's very unbattle tested as well. When you take a look at who she's actually defeated, Ravena Oliveira, low-level fighter. Jessica Rose Clark, she hung around back in the day, and you can give Lisboa some credit for going out there and not only finishing her, but pulling off a sub, so showing some growth with her overall game. But Jessica Rose Clark was never really all that, and the game completely passed her by. And I think that Croden does have the ability to be right in this fight. All right, based off the fact that Lisboa is 34 years old. She looked very bad the last time she was out there. But even with that being said, I'm not crazy about the tape that I see on Croden. I know one of her more recent losses was against a high-level opponent, someone that's really having a lot of success in this weight class in the UFC right now, and Jacqueline Cavalcante. She was able to make it to the final bell, but just to kind of understand that she's been in there with a high-level fighter before, and she didn't get her hand raised, but she also wasn't finished. This is a tough fight, man. I'll tell you what. I think that this is the thing that you have to keep an eye on, right? Croden's coming into this fight off of a year layoff. So even though I'm not crazy about how she looked in her last fight, and it wasn't all bad, but she may look much better here, and there's major red flags surrounding Lisboa. So this is a tough pick. I'll tell you what, as I take a look at the betting odds, I am not in favor of backing Lisboa with her being as big of a favorite as she is. I think that this is a much closer fight, and I would not be shocked if the dog comes through here. But all in all, I do feel a little bit more comfortable backing Lisboa because her striking and her athleticism is a little bit better, and she's a little bit more battle tested. I think that she probably can have a nice bounce back performance here, or at least just do enough to win a split decision. So I will pick her to win a close decision bout. In the middleweight division, we have one of the more recently added fights to the card in Azamat Bekoev and Yousri Belgaroui. And I think that this is a fun match. Of course, Bekoev has been looking phenomenal since joining the UFC. He's now 2-0. I mean, the level of competition isn't crazy, but it's the way that he's looking when he's in the cage. I mean, this is an extremely confident fighter. He's very well-rounded. He can grapple. He can knock you out on the feet. And this is a fighter that I do expect to really make a run in this division. On the other hand, you have Belgaroui, who is a huge middleweight, right? He is also battle-tested up in the light heavyweight division. We all know about the kickboxing experience that he has. That's his bread and butter. That's where he can have a lot of success, is if you engage in that type of fight on the feet with him. He could definitely be live to hurt you there or to even outpoint you. And he's showing development with his overall game as to be expected. Now, remember, the first fight that he had on DWCS, where he took on Marco Tulio, he was a clear step behind. If you remember, he was outstruck 74-46, but he was also taken down 2 times and controlled for over 6 minutes. Now, I do believe that he is a much better version of himself right now than he was in that fight. And I don't know if Bekoev is just going to be able to easily ragdoll him down to the mat. Belgaroui's tall, and we'll see how that plays out. I mean, it's definitely a possibility that Bekoev can get him down, but I kind of want to see how that plays out. You take a look at his redemption bout on DWCS, where he got the finish of the Japanese Awasaki. Okay, I thought that he looked pretty good in that fight and was starting to really feel comfortable in there. So he's going to be entering this fight with a little bit of confidence behind him, or some confidence behind him. But Bekoev, in my opinion, is just a different beast. And I think that not only can Bekoev change levels and have success down on the mat, I think that he could more than hold his own on the feet. I think that he'll be a little bit sharper and quicker to the punch. I think he can get on the inside and have a lot of success there. I could see him working a variety of strikes, and I got to be on the Bekoev side here. I like what I'm seeing. With that being said, we're going to get over to the betting odds. I still do believe that Belgaroui is a fighter that can hang around in the UFC. I've seen a lot of people being harsh on Belgaroui, and I think a lot of it had to do with that first performance on DWCS. People are calling him like a Timu, Alex Pereira, kind of like an imitation of a lot of the kickboxers that we've seen come in and have success in the UFC. A lot of people don't really feel he's going to be one of those names to be added to that list. And I'm not necessarily in agreement. I think that he can potentially have a good amount of success even after most likely taking an L here. I think that he still can. His game is rounding out and he's big. And as he stuffs takedowns and gets some proper matchmaking where, he's matched up against a fighter that's going to throw down with them on the feet, I think that he can showcase his striking abilities. And I'm not really willing to just turn my back on him as just some slouch. I don't think that that's the type of fighter he is. I think that he has still something going on still. You take a look at the betting odds here, though. Bekoev is a minus 270 favorite. And this line just recently opened. And, I think that that's an accurate line. I think that Bekoev is solid. Now, keep an eye on this line because we very well could see a lot of action start to come in on Bekoev. And if he's up in the minus 400 range, minus 350, 375. I may want to pump the brakes there. I like him, but I just think that Belgaroui is a solid fighter, and I like who he surrounds himself with, of course, right? He loses to Alex Pereira in a kickboxing match, and actually he did get the victory the first time they fought. Eventually, now he's tied in with him and Glover and all them. He's gotten a lot of work with them, and we've seen the success that they've had over the past years, right? They know how to take a fighter with this tall kickboxing frame and really sharpen him up to have success in the cage. So just don't completely overlook Belgaroui, but realistically, Bekoev is going to be the fighter that's the more complete mixed martial artist right now, and he's just really a fighter you want to keep an eye on. He's solid. So give me Bekoev to win. I'm going to say he wins a decision here. I'm going to say Belgaroui makes it to the final bell, and for the first time, we see Bekoev have a decision victory inside the octagon. Belgaroui has never been finished as of this far. He has seemed to be very durable to me when you break down tape on him. He's a big dude. He could take a strike, and I say he makes it to the final bell. This should really be a fun fight. Kyle Nelson jumps up in weight from the featherweight division up to 155 to take on Matt, the Steamroller Frevola. Both of these fighters are coming in off tough KO losses. And in the case of Frevola, he's actually coming into this bout off of 2 tough KO losses in a row, as BSD hit him with that head kick. And then after that, Faraz ZM hit him with the nasty knee. If you guys remember that KO, that was brutal. Took place in the 3rd round, and he was a little outmatched throughout that fight. He wasn't able to solidify takedowns. Now, the silver lining in those KO losses for Frevola, and I don't know if silver lining is the right way to put it, because regardless, it's kind of alarming what's going on. But what I'm trying to say is I like the fact that Frevola has taken some time off after these KOs, right? These 2 losses that he took, they span 2 years back. He took the BSD loss, and then he took a year off, came back, got knocked out by Faraz ZM, took another year off. So at least he's not jumping right back in there. But regardless, the durability is alarming, because even when you take a look at his last loss before that, he was knocked out by Terrence McKinney in the 1st round. So the chin is questionable. You do like the fact that in the mix of those losses, he was on a 3-fight winning streak where he had 1st-round KOs of his own and all of those wins, and even had a W against Drew Dober. So, I mean, there's something going on there. He's kind of a fighter that either takes you out or he's taken out, which very much could be the case here. As Kyle Nelson, we talked about the fact he comes into this bout after being hurt very bad by Steve Garcia. It's not the first time that we've seen him finish by strikes. Billy Q also finished him by strikes. He also has taken some time off since that loss, right? That Garcia L took place about a year ago, so that's something good that he has going on for himself too. And Nelson is a fighter at times that has shown to have decent power. We have seen him go out there and hurt fighters, right? You think of the Bill Algeo fight. He had the 1st-round finish. If you go all the way back to 2019, I know it was a long time ago, but the way that he knocked out Marco Polo Reyes, it was devastating. I mean, he does showcase to have power. I think that he is more than live to put Frevola out, while Frevola is also live to put him out. The difference I see here, what makes me want to side with my boy Frevola, and make no mistake, Frevola is one of the good ones, man. Shout out to everyone that's been tuning in to this channel for some time and remembers when I went live with Frevola as he was chilling on his patio with his Mama Duke sitting there next to him. And he was just having a vibe, sitting there chatting it up with me for like 30, 40 minutes. I mean, you really have to wish nothing but the best for Frevola. At least I do. But the reason why I'm going to side with him here is I like the wrestling that he has in his back pocket. Nelson has shown development with his grappling. I don't think that it will be just very easy for Frevola to go out there and just get takedowns, but I think that he can implement that in his game plan. I think that he could change levels and have that going for himself. I think he's coming into this fight in phenomenal shape from what we've seen from him. He's very motivated, and I just feel a little bit more comfortable backing Frevola, as I feel he's slightly the more well-rounded fighter here. I do, but this is going to be a tough fight, and the betting odds kind of reflect that. As you see, Frevola is not a big favorite here. He opened up right around a -135. Over here, he's a -138. Slight action coming in on him, minuscule action. And this line very well can dip the other way. But the books have this as a close fight. I also have it as a close fight, but I feel more comfortable backing Frevola here, as I know Frevola won't just go in there to headhunt. Okay, he'll pressure. He'll look to get takedowns. He has no problem with going to the later rounds and to knock him down, drag him out type of fight. Okay, he has a lot of heart. I trust him there. And I'm actually going to say that this fight, surprisingly enough, I'm going to say this fight goes to the final bell and Frevola wins a decision. So maybe you want to target a bet here with this fight going over 1.5 or this fight going the distance. You should be able to get some really good value there. See what kind of line you can get. Comment below. Let me know what kind of line you can get there. But I think that is possibly a solid betting target for this fight. And I also like Frevola on the money line. Hopefully the durability will hold up. We'll see how that goes. But give me Frevola to win a decision. At 135, I would say that both of these fighters were pleased when they saw the match that was offered to them in each other, right? Because both of these fighters favor going out there and showcasing their striking abilities. Not to say that they're completely one-dimensional. We have seen flashes from them down on the mat at times. But you take a look at both of their recent losses. Aoriqileng Yousri, the difference in that fight against Raul Rosas Jr. was the grappling. You take a look at Cody Gibson's last bout, which was against Damon Blackshear. He started to have instant success in that fight on the feet. Eventually, he gets dragged down to the mat and he gets caught in a Kimura. These fighters really like to go out there and look to put on a show for the fans, throwing down. And that's exactly what I expect to see in this fight. And if there is a high pace to it and they're really throwing down on the feet, one thing you note is both of these fighters have shown to be very durable. Combined, you take a look, both of these men have been in the cage many of times. Combined, they only have one KO loss, and that was on the Aoriqileng Yousri side when he was KO'd by Aiemann Zahabi. That was back in 2023. So that was about 4 fights removed. If there were to be a KO that happens in this fight, I do believe that it would be more so Cody landing something on him and the chin gets tested once again. I'm not sure if I favor that to be the case. What's more of an alarming fight to me was the match that he had against Daniel Marcos, right? Aoriqileng Yousri was definitely being outgunned. He was being outstruck. The pace was starting to pick up on him. He got hit with a groin strike and he didn't want to answer the bell. It's like he knew he was en route to taking a loss there and he did not want to continue. So you note that. And Cody Gibson, on the other hand, since the UFC parted ways with him some time ago, he went to the regional scene. He continued to battle. If you remember, he fought under Khabib's promotion, Eagle FC. He took a loss to Ray Borg. He was taken down in that fight, but then he went on a 3-fight winning streak before getting an opportunity to fight on The Ultimate Fighter, and he had a lot of success on that show. I mean, at least he went 2-0 before fighting Brad Katona to win the tournament, and he came up a little short, but there were times early on in that fight that he was the live favorite. He had a lot of success using his striking, and I could see him replicating that here. You take a look at the numbers, and the thing that stands out to me first and foremost is the alarming 5.46 strikes that Aoriqileng Yousri is absorbing, right? 5.46 strikes per minute compared to landing 4.65. Well, you see Gibson has a better ratio there. He's not landing as much, but he's not absorbing nearly as much. I like the ratio better there. I think that Gibson could kind of put it on Aoriqileng and he could push to the end of the third round. This can go to a decision and Gibson can get his hand raised here. So we take a look at the live money line. We see Gibson as a -120, if you will, a favorite. This fight is essentially pick'em odds. Aoriqileng Yousri is right around +100, right? He's at even odds. This fight is one of those ones I like to say, pick your poison. I like Gibson here. He's a little bit more lengthy. He's a little longer, and I could see him having success with his striking from the outside and just kind of out-voluming Aoriqileng here. So give me the American Cody Gibson to get the job done. We have a top 10 bantamweight matchup here as Marlon Chito Vera takes on Aiemann Zahabi. Vera is looking to get things back on track here as he is just 1-3 in his last 4 bouts. He's still ranked 7th in this division, and that obviously points to him losing to some high-caliber opponents. I have no issue with the Sean O'Malley loss, the Corey Sandhagen loss, but the most previous Davison Figueiredo loss, the former flyweight champ, I have a little bit of an issue with that one there. But really the big issue I have with Vera is his inactivity when he's in the cage, because he has all the skills to hang with some of the best of them. It's just he relies so heavily on that counter attack style that if he doesn't land that big strike, he really puts himself behind the 8 ball in order to win a decision. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that Zahabi is the most offensively active fighter, but from what we've seen from him recently, I do expect that he will be the aggressor in this match. And you take a look at these numbers. If you were to run Zahabi's strikes landed per minute numbers a couple fights ago, they would be much lower. I remember when I used to pull up data on him, this was a fighter that had much lower numbers. Of course, the Aldo fight probably gave that a little bit of an upkick. But all in all, Zahabi has looked very good in his late 30s. And it really all started with that knockout victory that he had over Draco Rodriguez. Okay, he was coming into that fight on a 2-fight losing skid, getting knocked out by Ricardo Ramos and taking an L against Vince Morales, a lower-level fighter. All of a sudden, he comes back to the cage. He knocks out Draco Rodriguez. He defeats Ricky Turcios, which Turcios had some momentum around him at that time. Then he goes out there and knocks out Aoriqileng Yousri. Okay, he had 2 knockouts within 3 fights. Of course, you guys know the big upset that he pulled over Javid Basharat. Then he defeats big names in the game. He goes out there and gets W's over Pedro Munoz and Jose Aldo. The Aldo fight was very painful for me. I had an official play on him that obviously didn't cash. And Aldo, he's my favorite Brazilian fighter of all time. I mean, he's such a legend. I'm a true fan of Aldo's. And Aldo almost had the finish on him. He hurt him. But you got to give props to Zahabi for how he fought that fight. And there's still a good argument that Aldo deserved to get the nod there. But at the very least, it was a competitive fight. And Zahabi is fighting at a high level right now. Okay, even though he's 37, oddly enough, he's in the prime of his career. I believe that. And he only has 15 pro fights, so there's not a lot of mileage on him. We know that his brother is one of the greatest coaches of all time. All right, Aiemann Zahabi has trained with fighters like GSP and all kinds of legends that are over there at TriStar. So he has a world of knowledge. He fights with a very high fight IQ. You see it in his matches. And I just can't help but think they're going to have a nice recipe to go out here and sneak off a victory against Vera. I do, because unless Vera really picks up the activity in this fight, I think that Zahabi is going to just slightly outpoint him round to round and do enough, whether it's working the leg kicks and mixing a little bit of boxing, but just being a little bit more active. I think he'll sneak out some rounds here. Now, if Vera comes in changed from what we've seen as of recently, if he kind of revolutionizes his career, he's only 32. I mean, we may see him look better than ever, but there needs to be a drastic change. I know he's been talking about that a little bit on Instagram, but I kind of have to see it to believe it. And right now, I just feel comfortable rolling with the Zahabi momentum. He's going to have the crowd behind him. He's well-rounded, and I think that he could do enough to squeak out a decision here. As we take a look at the odds for this fight, I will be clear. I think the value is on the dog, especially if you grab Vera nice and early when he was as high as a plus 155 dog. He's still right around a plus 127. I still think the value's on him. I think that this fight is a lot closer to pick-em odds than the line is stating, and it may close like that. But as far as the straight-up pick, I'm going to pick Zahabi to win via decision, and I do feel that this fight goes the distance. You see what kind of odds you could shop on this fight going the distance, or if you want to pick a certain fighter to win this fight, I think that you lean towards them winning via decision. Both of these fighters have shown to be very durable. I know Zahabi was knocked out brutally by Ricardo Ramos. I think he got hit with the spinning back elbow, if I remember correctly. But other than that, he's never been finished. He's never been subbed. And on the other hand, we know Chito Vera is essentially impossible to finish. That dude he's something else. So I think that either man is going to win this fight via decision, but I have a slight lean towards Zahabi. This is a close fight. I am expecting a split decision here. We have major implications for the future of the women's flyweight division as Manon Fiorot takes on Jasmine Jasudavicius. Both these fighters ranked in the top 5. Of course, Manon just fought against Valentina Shevchenko and she came up short. Shevchenko now is defending her title against Weili Zhang. Now you take a look at who's going to be next for the winner of that fight. Erin Blanchfield did bounce back with the big victory after she took that L to Manon. She defeats Rose Namajunas, and now she's set to take on Tracy Cortez. In my opinion, Natalia Silva is the fighter to keep an eye on. And if Jasmine were to go out here and defeat Manon, I don't know if that's a rematch that the UFC would be willing to put together. If you forgot, Jasmine did lose to Natalia back in the day. But these are the fighters' names that come to mind when you're talking about who is going to be next. I mean, these are the names that we're talking about. This is a huge bout here. And again, in the case for Manon too, she needs to bounce back with the victory. She obviously doesn't want to go 0-2 in her last 2 bouts and start to get pushed to the back of the division. I mean, she is really one of the better strikers that this division has ever seen, and she's also shown to really sharpen up her takedown defense. We've really seen that on full display in her last 3 fights, which were all against high-level fighters, right? Shevchenko, I think, only had 2 takedowns on her after multiple attempts and only controlled her for about 2 minutes throughout that 25-minute fight. Erin Blanchfield had almost 0 success with the takedowns there. And the reason why we're talking about this is because we know that is what Jasmine does very well. She pressures and she gets takedowns. And as of recently, or at least in her last fight, she's pulling off subs down there, right? She submitted Jessica Andrade with the rear naked choke in the first round. If you go back to the Ariane Lipsky fight, she also had a 3rd round Darce choke there. So it's not like she hasn't done this before. She also subbed Priscilla. But as she's starting to fight these high-level women, it's going to be tough for her to continuously do that. And quite honestly, I don't see her having that kind of success here. I'm really seeing Manon stuffing takedowns and not only getting the better of the striking exchanges here, but very realistically hurting Jasmine to the point where she could find a finish. Okay, that's actually where I'm going to go with this, guys. I think it's very likely that we see Manon bloody Jasmine up and hurt her bad. And maybe we see a third round TKO stoppage here. You think back to, and real quick, let's run Jasmine's resume back real quick, because I'm raving about the grappling success that she's had. But there's a couple of alarming performances where you see that she's one dimensional. And even in some of her victories, right? Like the Fatima Klein victory that she had back in 2024, which I was siding with Fatima because I knew going into that fight that Fatima was a hot prospect and she's really figured things out. And I knew Fatima was live as a dog there. And early on, we saw that Jasmine overwhelmed her with the size and grappling abilities. Fatima was undersized. She shouldn't even have been fighting in that weight class. But eventually, when Fatima was able to keep the fight standing and create space, you saw Jasmine getting lit up and you saw her being landed on. Of course, the Tracy Cortez bout, that was her last loss, and she got boxed up quite a bit in that fight. Natalia Silva did the same thing to her. Okay, so we have seen these performances where even when she's winning fights, she does get touched up and she kind of leads with her head and she's so tough. And I'll give her credit though too, because for a fighter that doesn't even have a wrestling background, it's kind of crazy that she's gotten her grappling to this level and as quick as she did it, because her grappling was dominant even since we saw her make that DWCS debut. I mean, right off the rip. So she kind of has that natural ability, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Just watching Manon stuff Blanchfield's takedowns with ease the way that she did, I think that she stuffs them here. And I think that her striking is going to be light years ahead of the Canadian. And I think that she's going to hand the Canadian fighter here an L on the main card in her home country. And that should be interesting to see. So we'll take a look at the line here. And Manon opened up around a minus 185 favorite. And right now she's a minus 230. So the line is definitely in agreement with the confidence you hear from me. Now, at a minus 230 line, I would actually state that there's still possibly some value there. It doesn't scare me away at the very least. I think that's an accurate line. I think that the opening minus 185 line was actually more so off. So there was a lot of value there in my opinion. I like Manon to win this fight. I'm going to, just to shake things up, I'm going to say that she wins this fight via TKO and she gets it in the third round. I think that as she stuffs those takedowns and she has a significant amount of time to unravel and unload her combinations, we're going to see a bloodied up Jasmine, and it's going to be like a TKO type of stoppage. It may go to a decision. It's not a lot of confidence behind the stoppage pick there. You're never really going to hear a lot of confidence in a stoppage pick in a woman's fight, but if there's a recipe to see one here, this is it. And I even know that Manon hasn't been getting finishes as of recently, even when she's winning. I think you have to go like all the way back to the Tabitha Ricci fight, which might have been her UFC debut. It's been a while, but we see that she hurts these girls, and that stoppage will be on the table. So give me Manon Farot to win this fight via third round TKO. At 170, Kevin Holland takes on Mike Malott. And boy, I got to get this one off my back here. For those of you guys that tune into the show regularly, I hardly pick Holland to win a fight. And a lot of you guys feel that it's due to that little beef we had going on some time ago. And it was all in good fun, but we were going back and forth. And, if you take a look at his record, the fact that I haven't picked him often doesn't really make me look that bad, because there's a lot of red going on here, okay? A lot of red. And I picked against him multiple times when he was the favorite. Like when you pull up the MVP fight, the Stephen Thompson fight, the Roman Delize fight, the RDR fight, okay? I've picked against him multiple times when he was the favorite, and I still came through. Now, in his last fight against D-Rod, I dropped the ball in a major way. And not just because I picked him to win the fight and then he lost, but, my boy was actually cornering D-Rod in that bout there. My boy Sasha Palatnikov, I brought him up before multiple times, former UFC fighter, and he currently fights, or he has been fighting Karate Combat and Dirty Boxing, Mike Perry's little promotion there. So he bounces around, but he's a real solid dude. And, I met him through doing an interview here on MMA Live Discussion. Solid dude. He's just like us. He likes to watch these fights, throw a little bit of money around. And, in that D-Rod fight, I should have backed my boy who was in the corner going against my old arch nemesis Holland. I should have known better. But, if I'm being honest here, I try to be professional with my picks. Okay. Sometimes you guys don't feel that I am, but I truly try to be as professional with my picks as I can. When I break down the tape and I see what I see, and I thought that Holland had a path to victory, whether it was even striking and using his length, but also going down to the mat and showcasing some of his jiu-jitsu skills. And that fight was a hell of a fight. And you got to tip your hat to both men. That was a war. and Kevin Holland came out on the short end, and one of the better fights that we've seen in some time. All right, but any opportunity I get to pick against Holland, like this one here, I'm definitely going to go against him because I've been very impressed with Mike Malott. I really have. I know he came up short against Neil Magny, but he was essentially dominating that fight before he made the mistake late in the third round. And we just consistently see Magny do what he did to Malott. We just keep seeing him do that. He did it to Jake Matthews. He did that. I mean, you could run the list. I mean, Magny does that to a lot of high-level fighters. He will break you down. He'll let you start off hot on him, and then he will break you down. Finished Zaleski dos Santos in the second round. He did that to D-Rod. He did that to D-Rod in the third round. I mean, he did it to Phil Rowe. That was a more closely contested match, but he dug deep in the third round. I mean, we have seen him break these guys down. He's no joke, and the reason why I'm talking about that so much is just I don't think that was as alarming of a loss as it seemed at the time. Magny's high level at doing exactly that, and that was a learning lesson from a lot. And look at the way he bounced back. He's in there. He's looking very sharp. What he just did to Charlie Racky was nasty. Okay, he was out ahead from the get-go, finishes him in the second round. I think that he could hurt Holland. I'm going to say he finishes this fight. We've seen Holland finish quite a bit. I think that the pace will be high. I think that Holland is going to get tagged with the strike as they're trading, and you'll see Holland step up to the plate and look to land his own damage. But I think that he runs into a hook. We see him wobbled up again. He's kind of flopping to his back where it looks like he's not hurt that badly. And he's kind of playing possum, but then you see the strikes start to rain down on him, and you actually notice, oh wait, he is kind of hurt. And then you see a stoppage take place like that. So I'm gonna say Malott gets the second round finish. And for all you hockey fans, how about Mike's brother Jeff throwing down on the ice? This was just the other night, so you see that the fighting spirit runs in the family. And I don't know, you guys let me know in the comment section who won that one there. That was a close one. Mike's brother started out hot, but now he's on his back. I don't know how many points you get for that on the ice, but that was a good little scrap there. But you see that the Malott brothers, they're tough. They don't mess around. I thought that was interesting. I posted that on my Instagram the other day, and you guys can go follow me on IG at MMA Fortune Teller. All right, but we take a look at the odds here, and what we see is Malott opens up as a -150, and we see action coming in on Holland. So if you like Malott, this is a line that you can be a little patient with and see where it goes, but maybe it goes down to pick 'em odds. We know Holland is kind of a household name, and people respect some of the danger that he brings into the cage. He's long, he's lengthy, but I truly like Malott in this fight. I think that he's just going to be a little bit sharper anywhere this fight goes, even down on the mat. You may see some wacky scrambles and see them throwing down there. I wouldn't even be surprised if we saw Malott land some ground and pound when he eventually gets in a dominant position. So I like Mikey. I think that he really has something going for himself right now. And he is without a doubt one of the best fighters to be representing Canada right now. So give me Malott to win this fight via TKO in the second round. For losing that initial Fluffy Hernandez versus RDR matchup that we had, this is truly a solid replacement fight. Brendan Allen is as game as they come, and we know he's a very high-level fighter in this division. Now, I do believe he has a couple things going against him here in this matchup. Of course, the fact that RDR had more time to prepare for the date is a plus. Also, Allen, you listen to some interviews from him as of recently. He's not training over at Team Killcliff right now. He's back up there in Louisiana, and he mentioned he's training with fighters like Kurt Halaba. And, quite honestly, to me, he seems to be a little bit more consumed with his personal life. Okay, I know he still talks about how he has love for the fight game and he's looking to do big things, kind of saying those cliche statements, but he also mentions about, grounding himself and just taking advantage to enjoy the small things in life. And I think that is part of the reason why he's not even training over at Team Killcliff FC and he's back in his home state. Meanwhile, you have this primed RDR that's trying to state his claim that he is next to fight for the belt. And with a win here, he very well could be next. I don't know. I probably would lean more towards Imavov getting the next shot, even if RDR gets this W. I don't know, though. I think it's a toss-up. But RDR is looking phenomenal. That victory he just had over Robert Whittaker, which I thought that he was very deserving of, even though it was a close bout. And it was an official play of mine. And oh my God, I was jumping off the couch as that fight took place midday. And that was a big win. I mean, that was going to be the difference in my day. You guys know what I'm talking about there. It was one of those kind of matches where if we would have lost the split, I was going to be depressed for the rest of the night. But I love the heart that RDR shows. I love the grappling abilities. I know his striking is unorthodox, but he lands the mark and he'll push the pace there. And this fight should really be a fun one. But I think that RDR is going to be just a little bit of a step ahead anywhere this fight goes, but specifically as the train wreck occurs and they clash and some of the scrambles start to take place. And that's a bold statement because, at least in my opinion, Brendan Allen has some high level grappling ability. So it's just that RDR is that much more polished and he's that much more high level. I think that his clinch work will be much more active. I think that the way he'll be throwing elbows and the knees will be the difference in those positions. But anywhere this fight goes, I just think that RDR is going to bite down on his mouthpiece and be a step ahead. And if you don't think that fight that he just had with Whitaker, going 25 minutes with him, if you don't think that makes him even a more dangerous fighter right now, he's going to be so calm in the middle of the fire, in a 25-minute fight here with Allen. Well, Allen, he's had his ups and downs. I know he's coming in off the Vettori victory, but, he had 2 tough losses before that against Fluffy and Imavov. The Curtis fight was a war that came down to the wire. That was a good learning experience for him as well. But I don't know. You take a look at the strength of schedule and you look at any of the W's that Allen's been getting, and I don't think that they're near on the level of an RDR. And I think RDR gets the job done here. Now, do I think he can find a finish? Allen has proven to be a very tough outing. He got KO'd by Curtis the first time around. He eventually got the redemption there. He got knocked out by Sean Strickland. That was an alarming fight. If you guys remember that one, that was weird. At the time, I remember watching that fight, and Strickland, we kind of knew that he was a good fighter, but I don't think we understood how clean his striking was because he has that awkward style with his head upright. But the way he just teed off on Allen's head, and Allen got rocked right off the rip. He tried to push through it. He was hurt. That was an interesting one, to say the least. But props to Allen. You think back to even when he fought on DWCS and he got the contract, right? He was in there with Aaron Jeffrey. Not a lot of people knew about Jeffrey back then. Jeffrey has proven to be one of the better fighters outside of the UFC, and he pulled off the submission in the first round after Jeffrey pushed the pace on him. He submitted Kevin Holland. The Dawkins fight was a good one. I mean, he's been around the block, and he's 29 years old. There's a lot of time for him to make some changes to try to get to that next level. But he's also a fighter that has 32 professional fights, and I kind of wonder where he's at mentally. I do. I don't know. You hear him say this or that, but from what I'm seeing with my own eyes, I think that RDR is the hungrier fighter here, and he prevails. So give me Reinier De Ridder to win this fight, and I'm going to say he wins either by unanimous decision, or I'm going to just throw this out there. There's a slight possibility he hits Allen with that 5th round rear naked choke. I want to throw that out there too, because the fact that De Ridder had a full camp for this fight, he's in phenomenal shape. If Allen starts to slow down a little bit, RDR is going to be all over him, and you might see those knees and elbows clashing in, where eventually you see Allen go down to the mat. You see those hooks sunk in, and that RNC comes into play. Keep an eye out for that one too.